Okay, here's a channel first. We're gonna be covering a Broadway musical. Hey, did I say you could click off this video? I'm what you might call a theater kid. Can you tell? And we theater kids always have that one musical that we like to think about when we're down or when we need to get inspired. For me, that musical just so happens to be Avenue Q. The winner of 2004's Tony Award for Best Musical, Avenue Q tells the story of Princeton, a young college graduate who makes his way to the outer boroughs of New York City, where he and his friends have to learn the hard facts of life, including racism, drunkenness, pornography, homosexuality, unemployment, and general anxiety. Despite being filled with a bunch of obscenities and crude jokes, it manages to tell a down-to-earth story full of lovable characters and good messages. A lot of us already know what makes Avenue Q so good, but we don't know how it got to be here in the first place. What went through the creators' heads to make something like this? And furthermore, how did it become such a big phenomenon in the Broadway world? Well, I'm pretty sure that's what you came here to find out, so let's not waste any more time. Here is the complete history of Avenue Q. Avenue Q was created by Robert Lopez and Jeff Marks. The two met at a BMI musical theater workshop in New York City. This is the same program that spawned great musicals like A Chorus Line and Dear Evan Hansen, so it was definitely worth getting excited about. The two hit it off right away as they were discussing their mutual love for musicals, which their friends hated, as well as their love of the Muppets. Yeah, a lot of people seem to think that the creators of Avenue Q actually don't like the Muppets, but that's actually far from the truth. In fact, they were big fans and they were devastated to see what happened to the series after Jim Henson died. For those of you who aren't aware, the Muppets churned out a lot of mediocre to terrible projects since Jim died. Kinda like what happened after Walt Disney passed away. The company was kind of lost without their leader, and Lopez and Marks were fully aware of it. In fact, they were so aware of it that their main goal was to help them out. For one of the BMI program's assignments, they came up with their own Muppet movie, Kermit, Prince of Denmark. This would loosely tell the story of Hamlet, as Kermit is supposed to go to Denver but accidentally boards the wrong plane to Denmark, and there the Hamlet cast is carrying out their story all while being played by the other Muppet characters. And Kermit's trying to help them along, and he's going, "I'm not supposed to be here, this is the wrong story." The script turned out to be pretty good. So good, in fact, that they actually received some grant money in the form of $125,000. Split 4 ways because there were 4 winners, but still. They pitched it to the Jim Henson Company, and they immediately turned it down because it was a musical, and that's not what they wanted to do anymore, and that was that. Kermit, Prince of Denmark was never going to be a thing. This is, of course, despite the fact that the script had a lot of positive buzz, and that a lot of industry insiders wanted to see it come to life. That didn't matter. The Jim Henson Company owned the rights, and that was that. Lopez and Marks were understandably disappointed by this decision, but what it helped them realize is that they really aren't fit to write other people's characters. If they did something wrong, and the rights owners ended up pulling out of the project, they're screwed. While they were recuperating from this loss, they decided that they were going to make their own version of a Jim Henson property, and they were going to do it their way. Although this property didn't turn out to be the Muppets, it was actually Sesame Street. Something that was objectively a bit of an easier target, all things considered. Around this time, they got introduced to former Jim Henson puppeteer, Rick Lyon. They ended up hitting it off and decided that they wanted him to be a part of their new project. In fact, according to Jeff Marks, they kind of built some of Avenue Q around Lyon's strengths. And what started off as a mean-spirited, poking fun vent session at Sesame Street turned into something that was totally all its own. The characters began to drift further and further away from their Sesame Street counterparts, more original characters and themes were being added, which is exactly what they wanted. By now, the only characters that really had ties to Sesame Street were Princeton, who was a parody of Kingston, Nicky and Rod, who were parodies of Bert and Ernie, and Trekkie Monster, who was a parody of Cookie Monster, and had a very on-the-nose original design that, all things considered, I am really happy they didn't go with. The puppets for the show were created by Rick Lyon. He would also play some of the characters on stage, specifically Nicky, Trekkie Monster, and the male Bad Idea Bear. The decision was made to not keep the puppeteers hidden, but instead have them on full display and to make sure that the audience sees their faces at all times. This was in order to get more emotions out of the puppets. See, when it's just a puppet on its own, it can be pretty hard to make it emote, especially when it's on stage. However, when the puppeteer's face is being shown, then the audience would subconsciously transplant the emotion on the puppeteer's face onto the puppet, thereby enhancing the performance. It was decided that this new project, now known as Avenue Q, was going to become a TV show, but that didn't really work out so well. According to Marks, our initial idea was to pitch it as a TV show on a station like Comedy Central. So we contacted everybody we could ever think of for a meeting to pitch the show to, but no one from TV showed up. But because we knew a lot of people in theater, they showed up. I immediately recognized Jeffrey Seller, the producer of Rent. He told me that if we did the show on stage, he would produce it. Now let me tell you, I've never made a Broadway musical before in my life, and I don't think I ever will. But even I know that if the producer of Rent is on your side, you'd better take him up on his offer, and luckily, that's what they did. Avenue Q was officially going to be an off-Broadway musical, and they had to get right to work. After shuffling through a few writers, Jeff Whitty was eventually selected to write the book, and Marks and Lopez were writing the songs. This was a very teamwork-heavy process that required both of them to be at the top of their game. Whenever one of them was out of ideas, the other would swoop in and pick up right where the other left off. And it made for some really impressive stuff. They wanted to make sure that Avenue Q was funny not just because puppets swore, got drunk, and had sex, but because the characters were charming, funny, and relatable given that they deal with a lot of situations that young 20-somethings go through themselves. The whole point of the musical was stated to be that when you get out of college, things are kind of rough. Your job sucks, you don't really know who you are, you're trying to find your purpose, and it doesn't really go so well, especially when you're not really familiar with the outside world. Contrary to what things like Sesame Street say, it's not really a big, fun, happy place, but it's actually full of darkness and unpleasant things. But as long as you have the right attitude and a good circle of friends, you'll get through it. The crew felt strongly about making this the focal point of the musical as, in their eyes, not a lot of things have talked about this issue up until this point. It was kind of an important aspect of life that just got swept under the rug. Until now, that is. In order to make the characters as relatable as possible, the crew decided to pool all their experiences and the experiences of their friends into the main characters, like Princeton's inability to find a job, Rod coming out of the closet, Trekkie being addicted to porn, Cape Monster being desperate to find a relationship, and Gary Coleman having the money stolen by his folks and now being the butt of everyone's jokes. Okay, maybe that one's a little, harder to apply to your life, but hey, I'm sure some people are going through it. That's another thing I think I should bring up. Gary Coleman. Gary Coleman, the former child star who was on Different Strokes, is the superintendent of the Avenue Q apartment complex. His life is terrible, he's really bitter, but hey, he's still a fun guy. Coleman was added to the script kind of as a reference to Sesame Street's tendency to have lots of guest stars, but also because the fact that Gary Coleman's really difficult life would fit perfectly in the style of Avenue Q, especially with the lessons they're trying to teach. Though they were very careful to cast a woman to play Gary Coleman and not a man, in order to prevent Gary Coleman from getting upset. Yeah, they were kind of worried about getting sued by Gary, and to their credit, Coleman actually did threaten to sue them. But it never went anywhere, so I guess it's okay. When Avenue Q debuted at the Vineyard Theater on March 13th, 2003, the crew thought it would just be an interesting little thing that would show up, make people laugh and learn, and then be done. But no, it got some rave reviews and a lot of buzz as it entered the Broadway stage. People were gushing about it, they were encouraging all their friends to go see it, and even people who hate musicals ended up loving Avenue Q. And the soundtrack, which incidentally was also the first Broadway soundtrack to be released with a parental advisory warning, became a gigantic seller. It was then that the crew knew that they had something big on their hands, something way, way bigger than they ever thought they'd have. It got so big, in fact, that Bill and Hillary Clinton went to go see it. And I don't mean this to be a political statement, but of course Bill Clinton gets his picture taken with Trekkie of all characters. I'm sorry, that's just too perfect. I had to bring it up, sorry. Okay, back to the story. The momentum for Avenue Q just kept growing and growing until the Tony Awards came around. Nobody was really expecting to win, they were more just happy to be nominated. But oh boy, were they in for a surprise. Again, quoting Jeff Marks, "When we found out we had won, it was a huge surprise. It was supposed to be Wicked's year. Wicked was a $14 million production against our $3 million show with 7 actors. Honestly, it was a total shock. I thought we had no chance. We ended up winning Best Musical Score, the show won Best Musical, and Jeff Whitty won the award for Best Book." After this, the cast of Avenue Q was invited to perform at the CBS Thanksgiving Parade in 2005, and were the opening ceremony for the 7th Gay Games. Their next big venture was West End. And in case you don't know what that is, that's basically the UK's version of Broadway. However, when the show made its way to the UK, some things had to change. Mostly in the transitions from scene to scene in the music that was played there, but also life outside your apartment got its tempo changed and a few small lines were tweaked. Now I know that's nothing drastic, but I wanted to note this because this is one of the very few times that Avenue Q ever had its script changed. The changes were also implemented in the new Las Vegas production, and eventually they made their way over to the Broadway one as well. Over the next few years, Avenue Q got to enjoy a lot more than just sold-out shows. They also had a lot more media appearances, like appearing on Jimmy Fallon, and Rod even got to present a Tony Award. On October 2009, Avenue Q was ready to close its doors. Except that didn't really happen. Sure, they left Broadway, but they left it for New World Stages. This is where they would stay until they closed for real in 2019. And the move proved that all that really changed was that it was in a new venue. People still loved it, people still bought all the merchandise, and a bunch of tourists went out of their way to go see it whenever they were in New York City. Life was good. But then, on May 28th, 2010, the real-life Gary Coleman passed away. Avenue Q was, of course, sad over this former child star's death because, well, for one, any death is tragic. And 2, he was a beloved figure in the entertainment world. They were not just sad, though, they were also scared. How was the audience going to react to the Gary Coleman character right after he died? Yeah, that's kind of a sticky situation. The actress who played Gary Coleman at the time, Danielle Thomas, describes being terrified of going on stage in the next performance. But lo and behold, the audience didn't only love the character, but this was possibly the best reception that the character ever got in the entire production. What a relief, am I right? Going forward, Gary Coleman mostly stayed the same in the script. They just changed 1 or 2 lines, just in case. Speaking of changing lines, there's a line towards the end of the song For Now, where they say that George Bush is, well, only for now. But given the fact that he wasn't president anymore, they had to change it. But what did they change it to? Well, that was kind of the fun. Around this time, it kept changing again and again. It kind of became a little bit of a fun thing to do to go see the show and see what the new line would be this time. Even though they could have easily said that Obama was only for now. It's more fun this way. And less political too, which is always a plus. 2011 was a big year for Avenue Q. And no, not just because Ricky and Rod became the first ever same-sex married puppet couple, but because Avenue Q was finally fixing one of its longest-lasting problems. Ever since it won the Tony Award back in 2004, it was in high demand to be performed at high schools and community theaters all around the country. In fact, even all around the world. Which, by the way, just a little funny side note here. In the Hungarian version of Avenue Q, Gary Coleman is replaced by Michael Jackson. I kinda wanna see that now, honestly. Anyways, because of the themes and vulgarity of Avenue Q, it made it kind of difficult for these places to put the show on. Some places would even resort to censoring the play themselves. To mixed results. Have you ever seen The Internet is for Corn?
The internet is really, really great. For corn.
This couldn't continue for obvious reasons. So that's why they came up with Avenue Q School Edition, which would take the R-rated musical comedy and reduce it to a PG-13 one that was largely still the same show. There were just a couple changes. Firstly, 3 songs, or I guess 2.5, were cut from the show. When You're Making Love and My Girlfriend Who Lives in Canada were completely cut out, and The Internet is for Porn was replaced by My Social Life is Online. This also meant that instead of being obsessed with porn, Trekkie would be obsessed with social media. Something that's aged like fine wine, if I dare say. A couple of the Bad Idea Bears scenes were shortened. The F and S words were replaced. Lucy's name was shortened, and Mrs. T's name was changed to Mrs. Butts. Other than that, it's still the same show. And I'm not being sarcastic here either. I know it sounds like a lot of things changed, but it's more quantity over quality if you get what I mean. The only real breaks in the flow are removing the 2 songs. Those, yeah, I'm not as okay with in terms of the story, but yeah, they're kinda some of the most vulgar in the show, so I can see why they had to go. But still, it's not required to do Avenue Q School Edition if you're part of a theater group or high school. But now, there's an alternative. 2011 also saw the production of Avenue Clue. This is a 3-part internet-exclusive comedy video from Playbill that was about the cast trying to figure out who killed Mrs. T. Despite clearly not being written by the same people that wrote the musical, it's still a whole lot of fun, and I highly suggest you go check it out when this video's over. Only when this video's over, okay? Please keep watching. We're not done yet. I wasn't able to find any sources that directly confirm this, but it seems like Avenue Clue was an instigator for Avenue Q doing more things Avenue Q based outside of Avenue Q. Confused? Yeah, I probably should have worded it better in the script, but you know what? I don't care. They were going to use the characters in more than just the musical. They were also going to use them in some HIV PSAs for the LGBTQ network logo in 2013. They had a live interactive web performance in 2014, and they started doing some similar videos to Avenue Clue on their own YouTube channel in 2015. With 2016 being as wild of a year as it was for many reasons, the cast of Avenue Q decided to lighten a lot of people's loads by making them laugh. And they did that by having a puppet presidential debate featuring puppets of Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton. And it was... In 2018, Avenue Q finally got their vinyl record. Sadly, no 8-track though. I know, I'm disappointed too. They also had a series of shows in July that had a lot of the old cast members come back and reprise their roles. This was their 15th anniversary, a true milestone, and they wanted to celebrate it to the best of their ability, and boy did it work. And my guess is that they also wanted to do this because in 10 months, they would be closing their doors. For real this time, not like that fake closing doors scare that they had on Broadway in 2019. No, this time it was for real. They played their last show on May 26, 2019, with many former cast members in attendance. And then, that was it. Avenue Q was done. The last thing we got from the characters was a video on Rick Lyon's YouTube channel where they all sing the goodbye song from Muppet's Take Manhattan. And I don't know if it's the video itself or my sentimental and emotional attachment to the musical, but I can add this to the list of things that make me teary-eyed. Right under the ending of Meet the Robinsons. And yeah, I know what I said. I don't care. I'm man enough to admit my emotions. Come on, fight me. In all seriousness though, a lot of people were really sad to see the show go. Granted, it had been around for a very long time, but it kind of became a Broadway staple, even if it wasn't exactly on Broadway itself. But still, one of the main lessons of Avenue Q was that everything, even the musical, was only for now. And hey, there's other versions being performed all around the world still, so it's never going to be truly gone. In fact, it may have a resurgence. No, I'm not talking about the For Now reunion they did in 2020. I'm talking about the fact that Jeff Whitty has pitched his ideas for a movie. Yeah, apparently they might actually make an Avenue Q movie. But of course, according to Whitty, they're gonna update the script so that it will fit more in modern times. And his changes are not great. There's removing Gary Coleman, okay, I can understand that. But also changing Kate Monster's character entirely, and making Trekkie more of a bitter incel neckbeard? Okay, I love neckbeard content, Vincey's my boy, but no, I don't really see that, sorry. Who knows, it might not ever happen. Maybe it will and they'll tone down some of these changes. I don't know, maybe the changes will be good. But I just thought I'd mention it, you know? So there you have it. From conception to closing, that is the story of Avenue Q. A musical that was not only funny, but also left its audience with a lot to think about and a lot of life lessons to learn. Even though it's no longer in production, it's still heralded as one of the musical greats. And it's still got a very active and passionate fan base today. I should know, I'm part of it. In fact, I have one of the posters for it in my living room. See? This is a video that I've wanted to do for quite a long time, actually. I was going through this box I have full of memorabilia and posters from my theater days, and I came across some of the stuff from Avenue Q. One thing led to another, and then it led me into this giant memory spiral, and it made me think, not just my personal connection with the show and how being in it got me out of a bad situation, but let's not talk about that now. Let's talk about that maybe some other day. What it got me thinking about the most was that despite the fact that it was written in the early 2000s, a lot of the themes it presents are just as, if not more, relevant than they were back then. I read my YouTube analytics, I know the age range of my audience, and I know that a lot of you are probably around Princeton's age. You're going to be done with college soon, and you're going to be finding your purpose and finding yourself. And if you ever feel lost and alone, I highly recommend you check out Avenue Q. It just might help you realize that whatever trouble you're going through, and whatever crisis is going on inside your head, all of that is only for now. Well, folks, thanks for watching the video. What'd you guys think? Have you seen Avenue Q? What's your favorite song from it? And hey, going back to today's subject, I know, crazy idea. What was your favorite part about its story? Story of the production, not the script itself. Although I guess you could comment that. Anyways, comment below and let me know because I'm always excited to hear what you guys have to say. Can you tell that these outros are never scripted? And now it's time to thank our wonderful Patreon friends. Masters of Fate, Manny Paredes, Kev, Leaf Storm, and Ryan Williams. And let's not forget our executive producers, Azarius, Unkale, Blackjack, Edward Haas, H.R. Hoffman, Who Else But Zane, YouTube Milkwad, Albert Robinson, I Am Fove, and Aaron Vasquez. If you would like to be just like these wonderful people and have your name read at the end of every Media Mementos video, then why not consider donating to the Patreon? It doesn't cost a lot, and there's a fancy little link in the description for you to click on. Come on, do it. You don't want it to get lonely, do you?
Thank you for watching, beautiful friends. I'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye.